Cheap for a reason or offering value there?
Bit of both. I certainly do think there is some value there, but you know, there's a lot of distrust around Telkom in general, and that's really what's driving the low share price at the moment.
We've seen the share jump today, and then we heard the government coming out saying that no such rumour actually exists. Have you heard more than we did?
Not really, no. Certainly the folks, the management at Telkom aren't saying anything right now, but the first question is, does it make sense for the government to take out the minorities? In certain instances, yes. The government, for reasons its own, sees Telkom as an arm of government, even though it's listed on the stock exchange with a large number of private investors, and sees Telkom as a means to furthering government policy. Now, you can't do that with external shareholders. You can only further government policy unless, of course, it's profitable, but assuming it's not, then they would need to delist it. So the government needs to decide what is most important for them.
It would be a reasonable conclusion, though, because why did they block the KT deal? And they're saying we want more control over it, but they don't have control. In a sense, they have a negative blocking power, but they don't have a positive creative power, because even though they have 40%, there are 50% of the shareholders who are not government or the PRC.
Indeed. However, the board structure is a legacy from up until a year ago. There were A and B class shares, and then of course ordinary shares. The A class shares were owned by the government, and that enabled them to appoint a number of the board, a certain amount of the board members. And so, still a legacy from that is you have a chairman who is a government appointee, as well as enough board members to effectively control the business.
Let's look at Telkom compared to the other two major players in this market for us, MTN and Vodacom. We get a chunky dividend from those shares. We get hardly anything from Telkom as an investor.
Well, it used to be a regular dividend from Telkom, and of course that stopped.
Indeed.
Agreed. We've seen in this instance that this is a very clear case of government not being a very effective allocator of capital. Where they have the capital, they can actually use the wonderful structure they already own in the country. Do you think upside for investors, honestly, after everything we've seen there compared to something like MTN or Vodacom, what would you hold?
Probably first choice, and it completely is dependent on risk tolerances and a variety of other things. First choice would probably be MTN. You know, I see the best available dividend growth coming from MTN, and more importantly, you know, Telkom is a fixed line telecoms operator, which is everywhere in the world a declining business. MTN is at the opposite end of the scale, where it's in frontier markets around Africa and the Middle East, where you have fantastic population growth driving good GDP growth, and Vodacom kind of stuck in the middle in a South African market that is now saturated, and also in a market in South Africa that has quite a bit of price pressure coming.
So what's going to happen to Telkom? I mean, let's assume government doesn't nationalise it, renationalise it in effect, and it carries on, but it continues to lose market share. It still has that fixed line network, but it just keeps doing more and more poorly, and its shares keep getting sold, and it has less money, and it's not allowed to do an international deal.
Firstly, remember that Telkom's doing so badly right now because they started ATA, which is of course their mobile operator, and that business is right in the startup phase. You know, any mobile operator will lose money for the first few years. So right now, that's right at the bottom of the J curve. It will improve from here.
Except it's not any mobile operator. It's coming very late to the market, where there are two very big players and another player, and it gave up its stake in the mobile market by selling the cash cow that was its share in Vodacom.
Absolutely. On the Vodacom sale, I think it was very good decision by the board, because shareholders of Telkom back then certainly are wealthier now, even with Telkom at 20 Rand a share, because Vodacom's up at about 94 Rand a share today, and you've received a lot of money in dividends from that. So certainly the board did the right thing at the time by exiting Vodacom. Moving back into ATA, far less clear that that was a good decision.
That was David Lerche, Telecoms Analyst at Avior Research.